Hey everyone, welcome back to the Critic-Verse. Today we're going to be talking about the latest episode of Superman and Lois, Season 3, Episode 9, titled The Dress. Before we get to the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help build the community here. Now let's get to the video. So, once again, the episode title is The Dress. This is in reference to a dress that Clark bought for Lois to attend an important gala back before they were married, and the feelings Lois has before an upcoming procedure and how her appearance in the dress will no longer be the same. The episode starts of a flashback to 17 years ago, and Clark and Lois are deciding on a wedding venue when Lois is told she's been nominated for a Meddy, a fictional award for journalism in the Superman and Lois universe. Mentioning that she doesn't have a gala-worthy dress, a coworker told her her chances are pretty good, and that she should get one. And then we return to present day with a doctor almost saying something along the lines similar with her chemo treatment. John and Jordan are gathering old clothes for a clothing drive, and Jordan asks John not to tell their parents about what's been going on between them in the previous episode. Which means John now has to lie about why he's not going to the fire station, and Jordan has no problem lying to the parents as well. He also promises to keep his superheroics to a minimum, as to not cause himself any more exposure. John Henry is taking the helicopter dad approach after finding out who Mateo's parents really are. He's taken away her phone, he put a tracking device in her bracelet, and also gave her a stun baton. Clark and John Henry disagree who should take point on the Manheim negotiation, but Sam backs John Henry. John Henry is leveraging Pia over Bruno for all the items he stole from the DoD in episodes earlier. Superman's blood, the XK, and the Bizarro corpse, and is not budging despite Pia's condition. Lois is going through her wardrobe and encounters the titular dress, and we get taken to another flashback when Clark first gifted Lois the dress. Turns out he sold his entire baseball card collection, but she just tosses it on the bed with a concerning look on her face. Clark and John Henry are arguing once again on how wrong it is to leverage a man's dying wife, while Clark believes he can get through to Manheim. But John Henry seems to agree up to a point. Natalie, Sarah, and the boys are at the diner, and Natalie just wishes she could just talk to Mateo. But the others advised against it, but oddly enough, Natalie only snaps at John's response and compares Mateo to Candace, which is weird because we haven't seen Candace since she left for her aunt's place in Topeka. Didn't even know her and John were still together because even he doesn't mention her. Later, Clark is second-guessing himself on the Manheim situation, but Lois tells him his empathy is what makes him Superman. And Clark notices the dress and doesn't want Lois to get rid of it, but she doesn't really want to talk about it. Mateo questions his dad, and Mateo starts to blame the situation on his parents' criminal background, and also starts to question how far their morality has gone, and rightfully so. But Bruno manages to console his son, knowing that he just wants to see his mother. John Henry is walking Nat home when he notices some of Bruno's guys waiting for them. He takes the stun baton from her and proceeds to go to work on Manheim's men. A street-level fight scene, which is something we don't normally get on Superman and Lois. Later, Nat is feeling down about not being able to see Mateo, which John gets and apologizes. Then John tells her not to give up, and if she really wants to see Mateo, then they'll make it happen. Lana comes by to talk to Lois about the dress, and Lois claims not to want it anymore, which Lana tries to empathize with her about what she's about to go through with her procedure. Superman goes to Manheim to empathize with him and convince him to return the stolen items, and it seems as if Manheim is considering it until the DoD raids his home. Several of Manheim's assets have been seized, and Superman and John argue once more, but Sam takes Clark's side this time after John Henry admits to knowing Clark was already going to be there, and sends John home for being too close to this case. While Lois is talking to Lana about her upcoming double mastectomy, and both of them reminisce on their struggles with puberty, while Lana tries to bring up reconstruction surgery, Lois notes that with the type of cancer she has, it will all depend on the results of her surgery to dictate whether or not she can get them reconstructed. Lois worries about the effect the mastectomy will have on her marriage and just how she sees herself, to which they have another flashback to Clark reassuring her how beautiful she looks in this dress, while she says she felt uncomfortable. Back to present day, Bruno tells the doctor to wake up Henry Miller because he wants him to do something for him. Cut to the teens meeting up, arranging a meetup between Nat and Mateo. She questions Mateo, to which if he knew about his parents, and he mentions hearing rumors about his dad, but it's his mother that was the real surprise. While the pair have a brief disagreement around his mother and her father, Mateo pulls it back and tells Nat that he loves her, and she reciprocates. Seeing this, Jordan apologizes to John for their argument in the last episode, and also belittling his junior firefighter program. And after a brief pause, Sarah forces them to hug, and she joins. Clark gets home to hear Lois deciding on having a party before her mastectomy at Bazumba's, a chicken place that's probably a play on the real-world restaurant Hooters that features waitresses that show off their assets. John Henry is at home working on repairing his suit when his AI alerts him that something is heading for the workshop in the air and very fast. Henry Miller then lands in his workshop, and when he uses the stun baton, it has no effect because Henry Miller is still souped up on the XK. John Henry manages to escape, but that just brings the fight into the public, and John can't call his suit. Now Clark, overhearing this back at the house, comes to help John Henry and causes a lot of destruction on Main Street. But Henry Miller manages to knock Clark far enough away so he can't intervene with him and John Henry. But John Henry manages to connect to his Warhammer, and in the coolest scene, dodges it as it comes flying right at Henry Miller, knocking him to the ground. But he gets back, and flying towards John at such a speed, John Henry hits him with enough force to end him. When Clark gets back, John Henry denies having a choice, which Clark disagrees, but that's easier for him to say, being Superman. Later, Nat expresses concern for her father, but not about his bruises, but that his personality seems to be shifting, and that using Mateo's mom as leverage is wrong, considering what they went through with their Lois and how she met her end. Mateo also gets into an argument with Bruno, and he decides to bring him down to the lab and show him the Bizarro corpse. And he tells Mateo that it's thanks to the corpse that he figured out a way to save Pia. Clark comes back home, and the boys check with Clark to verify the situation that happened with John Henry downtown. And they question what's been going on with John Henry lately, and Clark says even he doesn't know. Lois has a final flashback about the dress, and it turns out Lois didn't win the award, but she finally decided on a wedding venue, the Kent farm. And I think they also popped their limo cherry after that. But back to present day, the two dress up and do what they did the first time she was in the dress. And it wasn't what I thought it was. Apparently, they just flew together. Well, they sort of hover very high up off the ground. Alright, time to talk about final thoughts. This was a pretty okay episode, but mainly it felt more of on the drama end compared to being a superhero show. John Henry's plotline this episode was the only thing that kept the superhero elements afloat. Jordan promises John to take it easy on the heroics and does not use his powers once in this episode, even though it's been shown that he also uses it for very mundane things like leaving places. Sarah has been very pushy this season in terms of pushing Nat to romance and John and Jordan to reconcile, but she's been pretty solid these past 2 episodes. And it also really seems like the show is pushing Lana and John Henry together, and I just don't see the chemistry between them, but I do like the scenes where she helps John Henry be the parent of a teenage girl, seeing that she is also going through it, but has learned more from parenting Sarah. Lois' story in this episode continues this sad storyline she has, but it was beautiful to see her and Clark's early relationship and how it's still there. And this episode seemed to have this recurring theme of empathizing with others. Lana tries to empathize with Lois, Clark tries to empathize with Bruno, and even though Bruno and John Henry are both, well, John Henry already lost his wife and Bruno is in the process of losing his, you would think he would be able to empathize more, but it doesn't seem that way. On to John Henry. I think all the other characters are forgetting John Henry came from a world at war with super people, and he's reverting back to that mentality, especially since the danger is really close to home. But his fight against Atom Man, I'm totally on his side. Atom Man had powers and was determined to hurt John Henry. But in superhero shows, they always try to push this no-kill rule and then wonder why their villains keep coming back. But I digress. Anyway, tell me, what do you think? Did John go too far? Leave your response in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for joining me in the Critic-Verse. I'll see you next time.